Masugu is just a boring office worker who is stuck in the matrix, ruining his life only playing with his joystick and not of a baddie to clap. But what no one at work knows is that Masugu is top G, who have a baddie in his office to clap every day, and he's actually clapping Yui behind everyone's backs. Now, the two of them have to balance their awkward secret clapping romance while trying not to blow their cover in the middle of their messy office life. Inside an office building, two women are busy whispering, convinced that Tanaka from sales and Yashio from HR are secretly dating just because they brought back matching souvenirs twice. Masugu hears them gossiping and awkwardly tries to slip away, but his coworker, Shizuno, catches him and casually asks what he thinks about dating within the office. Masugu just shrugs, saying he doesn't really have any opinion. Before they can continue, the gossiping gets even louder. Maria, clearly annoyed, jumps in and asks if this is supposed to be some kind of soap opera. Shizuno laughs and says they should probably get back to work. Right then, Yui shows up, clearly irritated, and snaps at Masugu, saying her receipts got rejected again. Masugu calmly tells her there was a spelling mistake, which makes her call him a worthless loser before stomping away. Later that night at home, Yui is all smiles as she apologizes for being mean earlier, saying she didn't mean any of it. Masugu says shut the fuck up, looking drained, jokes that he thought she was about to dump him, secretly thinking to himself that they had just started dating yesterday. He finds it hilarious that despite their work reputation for fighting all the time, they actually had feelings for each other and finally made it official. As they hang out, Yui says she really wants to keep their relationship a secret for now. Masugu suggests they could start acting normal at work, but Yui quickly refuses, saying she's terrible at hiding her emotions. She lays down 3 ground rules for them to follow, but when Masugu brings up the idea of going on dates during their days off, she shoots it down, saying even that's too risky. He grumbles that he at least wants it to feel like they're dating properly. Blushing, Yui suggests they can go out wearing masks to stay hidden. She says she really wants to protect their brand new relationship and shyly admits it'd be super embarrassing if the whole office found out. Masugu smiles warmly, thinking that her honesty is exactly what makes his heart race every time. A few days later, during the crazy busy season, one of the guys asks if anyone's willing to run an errand to the accounting department. Yui quickly offers, excited because it's a chance to see Masugu, but her coworkers immediately tell her not to go, joking that she's always running her mouth whenever she visits. Feeling a little down, Yui pouts and mumbles that she hasn't seen Masugu in a whole week. Later, after work, Masugu texts Yui asking if she's free to talk on the phone, but she doesn't answer since she's already fast asleep. Feeling a bit lonely, he heads home by himself. The next day, Shizuno and Masugu hop into an elevator, carrying some documents. Shizuno groans about how the start of the month is always super draining, and Masugu tiredly agrees, secretly thinking he really needs a break soon. Out of nowhere, Yui also steps into the elevator, and Masugu panics a little, trying hard to stay calm. Meanwhile, Yui plays it totally cool, acting like it's no big deal. Shizuno compliments Yui for helping out the assistant director the other day and asks Masugu what he thinks about it. He mumbles that they should have just asked their own department for help instead. Inside, Masugu realizes that Yui is acting way too suspicious and obvious. Shizuno, sensing the tension, tells both of them to be nicer to each other since they're from the same cohort. But Yui smirks and says she can't even remember Masugu's full name properly. While Shizuno keeps lecturing them, Masugu secretly smiles to himself, thinking how ridiculously adorable Yui's been acting all along. As more people pack into the elevator, Masugu quietly grumbles to himself, wishing it could just be him and Yui alone. They start bickering like usual, but when they notice how close they're standing, they secretly hold hands, instantly feeling better. Later, while Masugu and Yui are chatting about their upcoming movie date, Yui suggests that they should start calling each other by their first names when they're alone, since they're officially dating now. Masugu says he's fine with it but admits he's already used to calling her Yui. Still, Yui insists, saying it would feel more special that way. Later at the theater, Masugu casually calls her Yui, making her instantly blush. Even though she was the one who brought it up, she freezes and refuses to call him by his first name. Masugu, of course, starts teasing her, enjoying how flustered she gets. As they settle in to watch the movie, Masugu realizes Yui might feel weird about it. After all, they've been calling each other formally for 6 whole years. Suddenly, the movie gets intense, and Yui clutches his hand tightly on Masugu's joystick. Just then, they bump into a guy Yui knows, Mr. Suzuki, who jokingly offers to treat her to a meal to celebrate meeting again after so long. Masugu greets him politely, remembering that Suzuki used to be one of their instructors during company training and was also Yui's senior back at university. At the restaurant, Masugu recalls hearing old rumors about Yui and Suzuki possibly dating because of how close they were. During dinner, Suzuki mentions he's in town for an overnight work trip and decided to catch a movie out of boredom. Masugu plays along, saying he randomly ran into Yui before the movie, while Yui awkwardly stays quiet, since technically, she waited outside the cinema for 2 hours without even watching anything. Watching Yui's awkward behavior, Masugu thinks that at this rate, Suzuki's definitely going to figure out their dating, but shrugs it off, figuring it doesn't really matter since Suzuki's from a different branch. After they leave the restaurant, Suzuki winks at them and apologizes for crashing their evening before heading off. As they walk back, Yui, still blushing hard, finally manages to call Masugu by his first name, but when he jokingly leans in for a kiss, she turns him down, saying it's way too risky after almost getting caught. While waiting for the train, Masugu asks Yui if anyone might get suspicious since she's still wearing yesterday's clothes. Yui laughs it off, saying she has a change of clothes stashed in her locker and that she'll be fine as long as no one from her team spots her. On the train ride, Masugu unexpectedly bumps into Maria Morizono, who mentions she recently moved to this area. Later at work, Masugu sighs to himself, thinking that another day of keeping secrets has officially started. In the morning, Masugu accidentally runs into Yui again, so they quickly pretend to be their usual selves and start fake arguing like they normally do in the office. Later, while grabbing a bite at a restaurant, Masugu notices Yui looking completely drained and asks if the new product she's been working on is almost ready. Yui mutters that there's just a little bit left. Masugu tells her not to overwork herself, but Yui smiles and says she's fine, everything's finally coming together, and her first ever suits are almost ready for release. Back at the office, Yui struggles to decide which sample to push forward. A coworker suggests she get a second opinion from someone in accounting, so Yui heads over to find Maria and asks her to taste test both options. Maria bluntly says that sample B works way better with the powder. Grateful, Yui thanks her and teasingly asks if it's true that Maria's reviews are trending on social media. Embarrassed, Maria asks her not to spread that around. Hearing that, Yui immediately says she understands how she feels, remembering how tough office gossip can be. Maria is a bit surprised at how understanding Yui is, and soon they're chatting about Masugu. Maria casually mentions that Masugu is super thoughtful and always puts everyone else first. Yui silently agrees, thinking that's exactly the reason she fell for him in the first place. She almost starts rambling about all the things she adores about Masugu, but Maria cuts in, saying she honestly never paid that much attention to him, snapping Yui back to reality. Later, Yui cheerfully hands out updated samples based on Maria's feedback and even helps her coworker Sumi with some tasks, while over in accounting, Masugu gets an earful from his boss. Grabbing a coffee afterward, Masugu grumbles to himself that the director is being way too nitpicky. His friends Kiramatsu and Tamura show up, and when they ask what's wrong, he just waves it off. Just then, Yui arrives, bright and energetic, carrying her new samples around and asking for everyone's thoughts. Masugu inwardly jokes that he hopes she doesn't post any of those reviews on Twitter because that could get brutal. After tasting her sample and giving some honest feedback, Yui thanks him with a huge smile before bouncing away, leaving Masugu smiling and feeling refreshed, determined not to fall behind her. Later on, Shizuno happily tells Maria Morizono and Masugu that she's got a little reward planned for them since they've been working so hard lately. Maria asks if it's something serious, but Shizuno laughs and says she just wants to drag them out for drinks, it's been forever. Masugu agrees easily, mentioning that Yui's busy at her own department's after party anyway. At the restaurant, they run into the planning department group and end up sitting with Yui and her friends. While everyone is chatting and drinking, Yui's friends start talking with Masugu and invite Sumi, who's been sitting alone again, to come join them. Sumi hesitates but eventually accepts, although he clearly isn't drinking anything. Soon after, Sumi gets a call and quietly steps away from the table. The girls casually tell Masugu that Sumi hasn't really opened up to them yet since he's still pretty new, but Yui's been helping him out at work, so he's starting to come around. They keep praising Yui, saying how dependable and amazing she is, but Masugu notices Yui looks like she's had way too much to drink tonight. After a bit, Yui staggers off and sits alone in a corner, looking totally exhausted. Masugu, worried, follows her and asks if she feels sick. Yui weakly says she's just tired and wants to sit down for a bit, but she's too embarrassed to leave now and make a scene. Masugu gently rubs her back and apologizes for crashing her night, but Yui, holding his hand tightly, ends up falling asleep right there. Just then, Sumi walks out of the nearby bathroom and awkwardly mutters that he couldn't really leave but didn't want to stand there listening either. Masugu freezes, wondering if Sumi just heard everything. Then Sumi looks between them and bluntly asks, "You two are dating, aren't you?" The next day, Yui starts freaking out a little, worrying about what they should do now that Sumi knows about their relationship. Masugu calmly tells her not to stress. Sumi doesn't seem like the type who'd go around spreading gossip. Still, Yui frets about how this could hurt Masugu's reputation at work. But Masugu smiles and reassures her that it's fine. After all, they're not doing anything wrong. Later, at the office, Shizuno tells Masugu that the assistant director approved his document on the very first try. During his break, Masugu walks over to Sumi and quietly asks if he could keep their relationship a secret. Sumi looks at him and asks why they're even hiding it. It's not like the company has any rules against dating. Masugu scratches his head and mumbles that he just doesn't want to mix his work life with his personal life. Sumi laughs and says not to worry, he wasn't planning to tell anyone anyway, especially since he feels like he owes Yui a lot. She had helped him out big time when he was still struggling to settle into the company. As Masugu walks back to his desk, he smiles to himself, feeling relieved that Sumi is such a good guy. He thinks about how much he wants to keep spending his days by Yui's side, supporting her and watching her shine. Meanwhile, Yui and her team are deep in a brainstorming session for their next big project. Yui suggests they should aim for a more luxurious design this time to stay ahead of their competitors. However, their supervisor, Mita, points out that most of the team, including Sumi, voted for a more classic style instead. Hearing that, Yui smiles warmly and says she'll definitely keep that in mind moving forward. Later on, when Masugu shows up, Yui rushes over, worried, asking where he disappeared to. Masugu grins and reveals he went out to grab the donuts she had been dying to try. After giving his thoughts on the treats, Yui thanks him with a huge smile and happily heads back to work. Masugu watches her leave and promises himself that he won't fall behind her energy. Meanwhile, Masugu playfully tells Yui that he loves donuts just as much as she does and offers her a bite, but instead, Yui suddenly kisses him. After they finish snacking, Yui mentions there was a meeting today, but admits she's still a little nervous around Sumi. Masugu reassures her that it's fine. Sumi seems like a decent guy and promised not to tell anyone. During a meeting later, Yui gets flustered again, wondering why Masugu blushed while talking about Sumi and starts panicking about how much Sumi might know. As they casually chat about donuts, Yui hurriedly explains that a female friend bought some replacements, realizing too late that it sounded suspicious. Sumi just bluntly says he doesn't care. When one of the girls mentions they should coordinate finances with accounting, Yui nervously glances at Sumi, and he instantly knows this is going to be a headache. Masugu finds out he's stuck subbing for the section manager again and takes Yudu with him, since she knows about the joint development project. After they leave, Yui and Sumi stay behind working, and Sumi suddenly asks if she doesn't trust him at all. Realizing she's been acting super obvious, Yui quickly apologizes, admitting she's feeling a little rattled since she's never been in this kind of situation before. Sumi calmly warns her if she keeps acting so suspicious, people are going to find out, and it won't be his problem anymore. Yui sighs and admits he's right. Meanwhile, Masugu goes over to the archives building to help Shizuno with some files and feels proud that he finds what he needs pretty fast. But suddenly, he hears a loud crash from another room. When he opens the door, he sees Yui sprawled on the floor, surrounded by a huge mess of documents. She explains that the planning department was told to clean up the archives, which is why she's there. Even though she says she can handle it alone, Masugu decides to help, thinking it's fine to drop the office rivals act since no one's around. Yui asks him to hold the ladder steady while she climbs up to clean. But as she's working, Masugu can't help but think she looks way too defenseless. Worried, he tells her to come down and says he'll finish it instead. They start bickering again until Yui suddenly slips, but Masugu catches her just in time. They almost end up kissing, until Yudu and her friend barge in, ready to help Yui, though honestly, it looked more like they were about to help her or get fired. However, they're surprised to find the room completely empty and start wondering where Yui disappeared to. Meanwhile, Masugu and Yui are quietly hiding behind a shield, with Masugu inwardly begging for the girls to give up and leave, otherwise they'd both be in deep trouble. Thankfully, after not finding anyone, the girls eventually give up and head out. Once the coast is clear, Masugu, still blushing, awkwardly reminds Yui that they need to stick to their rivals at work rule, even when no one's around. A few days later, Shizuno gloomily gathers them and says she has something to confess. She pulls out baseball night game tickets, 3 days worth, completely shocking Masugu. At the stadium, Shizuno proudly says she invited the planning department to join too, just to keep the good vibes going, though Mita didn't come because of his family obligations. Masugu and Yui end up sitting next to each other, both blushing like crazy. Masugu smiles, thinking this feels like a dream come true, going to a baseball game with your girlfriend. As they watch the game, Masugu happily explains batting averages to Yui and cheers loudly when their team scores 2 runs, giving her a big high five. For a second, they freeze, worried someone might notice, but then they realize the whole crowd is too busy having fun to care. Later, Masugu notices that Yui doesn't really know anything about baseball. She sheepishly says she doesn't, but she does know he really loves it. Feeling bold, Masugu grabs her hand as they walk back to their seats and tells her it's okay, just for today. When the batter smacks a home run, Masugu, caught up in the excitement, pulls Yui into a big hug right before Shizuno jumps in to join the celebration too. As they sit back down, Masugu laughs and admits he has no clue what's happening anymore. Yui leans in and whispers that they should totally come watch a game together again sometime. Later, while Yui and her friends are out shopping for lunch, she spots their product on a store shelf, but her smile fades when she notices no one's buying it. Meanwhile, Shizuno, getting off a train, runs into a coworker and stops to chat for a bit. After a short conversation, Shizuno says she has errands to run and parts ways. She heads over to a cozy little cafe, thinking about how much she loves talking with people, but only because having time alone lets her actually enjoy it. While sitting there, a customer walks in, and to her surprise, it's Sumi. She invites him to sit down, and Sumi apologizes for interrupting her quiet time. Shizuno, slightly awkward, jokes that not many people even know about this hidden cafe, then calls the waitress over so they can place their orders together. While heading out, Masugu bumps into Yui and asks if something's wrong since she sounded a little off during their call. Yui brushes it off with a smile, saying she's just been stuck working tons of overtime lately. Masugu guesses it's because it's their busy lunch week rush. Meanwhile, when they finally grab some food, Shizuno tries to spark a conversation between herself and Sumi. The mood stays super awkward, though, and Sumi eventually tells her she doesn't need to force it. He actually prefers sitting alone in cafes like some oddball. Shizuno excitedly says she's exactly the same way and jokes that she'll just start working and ignoring him from now on, which Sumi happily agrees with. After finishing his meal, Sumi decides to leave first, thanking Shizuno for even trying to chat, since until now, he's only ever seen her totally drunk. Stunned, Shizuno sits back down, wondering if she was really that embarrassing. Back at work, Yui grows more and more frustrated seeing that nobody is even reviewing her product, and it's not selling well either. Sumi stops by to hand her the data entry sheet, and Yui grumbles internally, wondering if the section manager even remembers her product's upcoming release. Later, Yudu approaches and offers Yui some chocolate samples she's handing out. Yui politely declines, but when Yudu insists, Yui snaps, repeating loudly that she said no. Shocked, Yudu quickly apologizes, and Yui realizes she was way too harsh without meaning to. That night, at Masugu's apartment, he notices how gloomy Yui looks. She vents all her bottled-up frustration, angrily asking why no one cares about her hard work or why her project isn't getting any attention. She admits she didn't want to complain, but she feels completely stuck, lost, and defeated. As tears start to build in her eyes, Masugu gently asks if that's really all, and reminds her that it's perfectly normal to feel like this sometimes. He tells her it's okay to be upset and that she shouldn't bottle it up, it's better to just be real about how much it hurts sometimes. Later, while Yui is out shopping for Yudu and Yukiko, she happily spots a group of schoolgirls buying her product. Excited, she quickly rushes back to the office to share the good news. During lunch, Yudu and Yukiko sit down with her and talk about how they're struggling to get materials too. While they're chatting, Yui overhears a few girls nearby mentioning Masugu. She reminds herself to stay calm and not react every time she hears his name. But as she listens more closely, she notices the girls are hyping him up way too much, and she's stunned, wondering if Masugu might actually be popular with other women. The thought hits her hard, maybe she's gotten a little too relaxed around Masugu lately and isn't being careful enough as his girlfriend. Later at Masugu's place, he notices Yui acting a bit odd and asks her what's wrong. He gently takes her hands and tells her to just say whatever's on her mind. After hearing her concerns, Masugu bluntly declares that there's no way he's popular with girls. Yui argues back, saying from her point of view, everything the girls said about him is absolutely true. Masugu just laughs it off, saying it's honestly no big deal, people talk like that about him all the time. Blushing a little, he reassures her that she's the only one he sees, calling himself a total gigachad just for her. The next day at work, Yudu checks in with Yui, asking if she's alright since she looks a little worn out. Yui quickly puts on a bright smile and says she's fine. Later, those same girls from before get into the elevator and start gossiping about Masugu again. But this time, Yui smiles to herself, realizing it actually feels kind of nice hearing people say good things about her boyfriend. Masugu unexpectedly steps into the elevator, and the girls immediately start chatting him up. They ask what he usually does on his days off, and Masugu casually says he just spends his free time with his girlfriend, surprising everyone. After he leaves, Yukiko tells Yui she had no idea Masugu even had a girlfriend, then admits he really is a good guy. Later, Masugu mentions that he's starting his summer break tomorrow since Aben is coming up and the office is pretty chill about time off. Maria Morizono shares that she's planning a trip to Nagoya using a rail pass, and asks Shizuno if she's taking any time off too. Shizuno laughs and says she's not planning anything right now, she's saving her vacation for fall since everything's too crowded during summer. A month ago, Masugu and Yui were caught up in a lively argument about whether they should take their first trip to Hokkaido or Okinawa. As they strolled home, Masugu smiled and said the moment felt kind of nostalgic. He pointed out that since it's typhoon season, heading to Okinawa is a bit risky, they could easily get stranded. Yui, ever the optimist, brushed off his concerns and said everything would be fine. She insisted that their first trip needed to be something truly special, and Masugu laughed, saying it didn't really have to be a Kato, he just wanted a relaxing soak in a hot spring like a proper man, preferably one who owned a Tesla. Still arguing, Masugu said he honestly didn't care where they went as long as they could be together. Yui, a little annoyed, asked if he even cared about the trip at all, and he blushingly repeated that all he wanted was a private hot spring bath. Hearing that, Yui suggested they check out a famous inn in Yamanashi instead. It sounded like the perfect middle ground. Fast forward to today, Masugu is telling Maria Morizono and Shizuno that he's heading to Yamanashi to visit his parents. Meanwhile, back at the office, Yui finishes up her work and gets a message from Masugu, who's already packing and getting ready to leave. Just then, Mita bursts in with bad news: the pre-sale stock still hasn't been delivered. After a quick scramble, Mita says Yui and Yukiko will have to stay and pull overtime to sort things out. While working late, Yui feels a heavy pang in her chest. Even though she knows Masugu would smile and forgive her if she had to cancel, she can't stand the thought of letting him down. She clenches her fists and tells herself she's going to finish everything tonight, no matter how long it takes. At that moment, the on-site support team rushes in like heroes, ready to help and make sure everything gets done. Later, after finally wrapping up her work, Yui catches her train and starts walking home. Out of nowhere, Masugu shows up, gently grabbing her hand and asking why she hadn't been replying to any of his messages. Yui quickly apologizes, explaining she had to pull some unexpected overtime. Relieved, they happily walk home together, excited to finally get ready for their long-awaited trip. Meanwhile, at a cafe, Sumi takes a seat across from Shizuno. She casually asks why he didn't go on vacation like everyone else. Sumi shrugs and says that everything's too crowded right now, so he's planning to take a longer, quieter break in the fall. Hearing that, Shizuno smiles warmly. As they enjoy their food, she chuckles and admits that even though they never really made a plan for it, Sumi has somehow become a regular part of her morning routine. Masugu and Yui are happily sharing a raindrop cake when Yui asks if he's really okay with coming to Yamanashi for their trip. Masugu smiles and says it's totally fine. Even though he's from around here, he hasn't spent much time exploring it. While they're relaxing, a young girl approaches them, and Yui reassures him that it's fine to act natural, they're on vacation after all. Out of nowhere, a local reporter asks if they'd be willing to answer a few questions. Completely embarrassed by the idea of being on camera, Yui blushes hard and bolts away without saying a word. Later, as they continue sightseeing, Yui tries to defend herself, saying they would have been in real trouble if someone from their company saw them. Masugu laughs, reminding her it was only a tiny segment for local TV, nothing serious. They stop by a stunning sunflower field and happily take in the view, when Masugu suddenly leans in and kisses her. He then brings up a memory from their third-year training camp, the time everyone overslept. He laughs, saying they were even arguing during practice that day. It was pure chaos. Yui, confused, asks why he's suddenly thinking about that. Masugu blushes a little and mumbles that it just popped into his head. He remembers how, at the party that night, after everyone had passed out drunk, the two of them stayed behind to clean up together. Yui had complained about how ridiculous company traditions were, but then smiled and said she was glad he was there with her, completely surprising him back then. Right now, Masugu admits that's when he first realized he had fallen for her. They spend the rest of the day having fun, and while shopping, Yui asks what they should do about souvenirs. Masugu shrugs and says she can buy whatever she wants. He's not picking up anything for the accounting department. They come across a small pop-up stand selling fresh grapes, and Masugu casually reveals that his family actually owns a grape farm nearby. Yui, surprised, asks if he's going to visit them, but he says he'd just get in the way since it's busy harvest season. As they snack on the grapes, Yui asks if he grew up surrounded by this gorgeous scenery. Masugu brushes it off, saying it's not that special to him. Yui beams and says she absolutely loves Yamanashi, and she hopes they can come back here again someday to share the same view together. On their last day, Yui smiles and says she's ready to get back to work starting tomorrow, feeling proud that they made the absolute most of their trip. Masugu asks if she's already thinking about her next project, and Yui confidently says there are still tons of ideas she's dying to try out. When she turns the question back to him, Masugu starts to say things will probably stay the same, but then he hesitates and mutters that maybe it's time he challenged himself too, like aiming for a higher certification. Yui lights up and says that's awesome, then jokes that they should set a goal for next year, and whoever doesn't meet their target will have to pay for their trip's hotel and basically go broke for life. Both laugh, sealing the silly but serious deal. Back at the office, Maria Morizono hands out souvenirs to Masugu and Shizuno from her trip to Nagoya, but refuses to show them any photos, saying they're already up on social media. She later heads over to Yui's desk to give her some souvenirs too, including a few from Yamanashi. Coming back, Maria chats with Masugu, telling him about everything Yui excitedly shared from her trip. She asks if Masugu has ever visited the spots Yui mentioned, but he quickly says those places are way too far from his parents' house. Maria laughs, noting how Yui couldn't stop talking about her trip, so she must have had an amazing time. They agree to give their best effort starting today and dive back into work. Later, Yui checks in with Masugu about how his studying is going. He admits it's pretty tough overall, but he's making slow progress. He asks about her projects, and Yui says she's basically starting fresh with her marketing strategy after figuring out what went wrong with her last product. Sales still aren't great, but she's determined to use what she learned and move forward step by step. Later, Yui leaves with Mita for a meeting with the new business department, though Mita grumbles he's not exactly a fan of their lead. When they enter the meeting room, they meet Hiromi Kirabayashi, the stoic, slightly intimidating new department head. After skimming through their paperwork, Kirabayashi bluntly points out that the planning team's workflow is way more complicated than it should be. He suggests trimming out an unnecessary step, explaining that he wants a team capable of thinking independently instead of being trapped in a rigid process. Yui is caught off guard but can't help admiring how confidently he cuts through the usual office nonsense. After Mita leaves, Yui awkwardly finds herself alone with Kirabayashi, who casually asks if she's ever thought about joining his team. He says he's heard good things about her and mentions they're still recruiting fresh talent. Yui, flustered, mumbles that she hasn't even launched a major successful product yet. Kirabayashi calmly agrees, but adds that her chocolate sweet was actually a fantastic project. He explains that while it might be tough for her to get big projects approved in the old planning department, she would probably thrive if she moved over to his team. Later, Yui visits the new business department store brand with Masugu and is amazed to see how packed it is, even on a random weekday night. Tasting the sweets there leaves her stunned by how good everything is, and as they head home, she quietly mutters that she's still blown away by how impressive Kirabayashi really is. She admits joining his department would be an incredible chance for her career, but deep down, her dream has always been to sell her own sweets through the planning department. Now, she's stuck, wondering if it's really okay to just walk away from her original goal so easily. Masugu notices her stressing out and stops her, telling her to think carefully about what she truly wants, because this could be a major turning point for her future. As they continue walking, he reminds her gently that he can't make all her choices for her. Later, as Yui buries herself in work, she reflects on how much pressure she's under because of her current position and responsibilities. The proposal she submitted to the section chief is still going through revisions, and she's sure he'll just tell her to prioritize the team's projects over her own ideas for now. She wonders if jumping over to Kirabayashi's team would let her dodge all the endless roadblocks she's hitting now. The next morning, she's surprised to find an email from Kirabayashi waiting for her. He sent all the study group materials they discussed. Yui realizes she could learn so much from him, meaning she'll have to make a choice soon. But before she can dwell on it, she overhears a problem with the production schedule and instantly realizes it's her mistake. The section manager pulls her aside, reminding her she needs to focus on the team's work, not just her personal projects. Feeling crushed, Yui agrees and walks away, trying not to show how upset she is. Yudu and Yukiko cheer her up, telling her not to let it ruin her mood, and Yui forces a small smile. Inside, though, she feels frustrated, wondering if she let herself get carried away just because someone important like Kirabayashi noticed her. She beats herself up, thinking she's messing up everything. Later, when she shows up at Masugu's place, she throws her arms around him without saying a word. Cuddled up together, she eventually confesses that she was so overwhelmed by her decisions and pressure that she made mistakes and ended up letting people down. Masugu just listens patiently and tells her it's okay, because the important thing is that she's trying and thinking for herself, not just giving up. As they walk home, Yui says she feels way clearer now after talking to him. Masugu quietly admits he's never switched departments himself, so he doesn't know exactly how she feels, but he reminds her that whatever happens, she's the one who needs to choose her own path. And if she ever feels like she's drowning again, he promises she can always come to him. Back at work, Kirabayashi tells Yui that even if she's running a little late, she should still submit her idea, because ideas are precious no matter what. Yui tries to protest but realizes it's the same thing all over again. He pushes her without worrying about her feelings. He bluntly says there's no real advantage in always playing it safe and asks if she's just scared. Annoyed, Yui brushes past him, thinking he really has a way of poking at her insecurities without sugarcoating anything. Fired up, Yui marches over to the section manager and asks him to submit her proposal, confidently declaring she can handle both her team's work and her own projects at the same time. After a moment of hesitation, the manager says he'll have to reshuffle some of her tasks and asks if she's okay with taking on anything that comes her way. Sitting back at her desk, Yui tells herself that if she truly wants to make her dreams happen, she's going to have to stand up for them no matter how tough it gets. The next morning, Yui apologizes to Kirabayashi for being rude the other day. Kirabayashi brushes it off and asks if she called him to give her answer about transferring departments. Yui nods and says she's decided to decline the offer. She wants to stay in the planning division for now and focus on creating her own original sweets. She mutters that she hasn't reached her goals yet, but then surprises him by asking if she could still attend his department's study sessions. She admits she's probably asking for too much, but thanks to him, she realized that success only comes when you reach out and grab it yourself. She gushes about how incredible the materials he shared were and promises that if she joins the study sessions, she'll definitely make a best-selling product someday. Kirabayashi smiles, understanding where she's coming from, and says she can start joining them at the next session. He admits he's not obligated to help someone outside his department, but says he has his own reasons. He sees it as an investment in her potential. Yui lights up and thanks him gratefully. Later, Masugu tells Yui they should take some time to recharge while they're relaxing in the sauna. During the holidays, as Masugu waits for Yui, he gets a message saying she's running late. With an hour to kill, he wanders into a yakitori shop for a quick snack and ends up watching a news segment about hiking. He briefly wonders if Yui would want to go hiking too, but quickly reminds himself this was supposed to be his solo time. Nearby, some office guys are complaining about their wives, and Masugu starts wondering if he'll turn into one of them someday. Then he catches himself thinking about Yui and chuckles, realizing he could never badmouth her like that. When one of the men's wives calls and he immediately leaves, his friends joke that he's clearly crazy about her. Masugu grins to himself and thinks he's the same. Later, Yui shows up and teases Masugu for drinking alone before she arrived. She pouts, saying she had been excited to toast with him, and he quickly apologizes with a smile. As they stroll past a Christmas display, Yui stops to look at the gifts, and Masugu realizes 6 months have already flown by. While riding the train, Masugu overhears two women gossiping, and it reminds him that their 6-month anniversary is coming up. He's never cared much about anniversaries before, but now he wonders if Yui does. At work, he starts secretly researching Christmas gifts and smiles to himself, picturing Yui's reaction. Maria Morizono notices his weird grin and asks about it, so he casually asks her what kind of present would make her happy. Maria finds it sweet but asks why he's suddenly curious. Back home, Masugu debates getting jewelry, but remembers Yui doesn't usually wear much. When Yui comes out of the bathroom, he quickly hides his phone so he doesn't spoil the surprise. She casually asks if he's free on Sunday since she wants to check out a sweets fair, but Masugu lies, saying he has to study for bookkeeping. Later, Masugu nervously visits a jewelry store, realizing this is the first time he's ever lied to Yui. The store clerk eagerly helps him choose, suggesting they engrave names on matching rings. Masugu agrees, determined to make this anniversary extra special. Meanwhile, while Yui and Yudo are strolling around, she spots Masugu, even though he said he was too busy studying. She decides not to confront him and quietly walks away. That night, Masugu dreams about presenting the rings to Yui. In his dream, he's sneaking around her house, trying to secretly measure her ring size. When Yui asks why he's there, he cheerily says he just wanted to see her. She playfully scolds him about his studying, but he insists he spent the whole day preparing, surprising her. In real life, Yui wakes up at night and notices Masugu fiddling with his phone. Masugu finalizes the ring size and plans to go back to the store tomorrow. He also texts Yui, telling her to keep Friday free, planning a dinner date to celebrate. At work, Yui grumbles to herself that Masugu is definitely hiding something after spotting him sneaking around and texting secretly. She gets even more suspicious when Masugu messages her again, asking her to block off Friday. Later, Masugu rushes back to the jewelry store to pick up the finished rings, feeling excited. As he heads home, Yui suddenly appears behind him and demands to know what he's been hiding. Masugu panics, unsure if he should just give her the gift now, but holds back. He wants the timing to be perfect. When Yui tearfully asks if he's planning to break up with her, Masugu immediately denies it and pulls out the gift. He explains that he's been preparing a surprise for their 6-month anniversary. He just wanted to make her happy. Apologizing for making her worry, he tells her to open it, and Yui is stunned when she sees the matching engraved rings. Masugu admits they can't exactly wear them openly yet, but Yui blushes and insists she's going to wear hers every single day. Feeling overwhelmed, she apologizes for doubting him, thanks him from the bottom of her heart, and says she loves him. In her office, Yui pitches some ideas to the section manager, but he says they're all a little off from the original concept. Frustrated, Yui realizes she'll have to start from scratch again. But as she glances at the ring on her finger, she smiles, remembering how Masugu had sold his brand new iPhone just to buy it for her. Before she even realized it, being with him had become something so natural, and that thought made her incredibly happy. As Yui heads out for lunch with Yudu and Yukiko, they tease her about smiling at her ring again. Laughing, she finally admits she's dating someone, and that he gave her the ring for their 6-month anniversary. They squeal that they totally knew it, and say matching rings are adorable for a milestone like that, making Yui beam even brighter. Meanwhile, Masugu is seen at work, secretly wearing his matching ring on a necklace under his shirt. While leaving the office, Masugu thinks about how this will be his and Yui's first Christmas together. They had just celebrated their anniversary, so he wonders what to do, especially since Christmas Eve falls on a weekday this year. He figures they can just relax together over New Year's, but deep down, he knows Yui's the type who loves special events. At work, Shizuno complains that she drank too much the night before, and Masugu jokes that drinking parties always multiply near the end of the year. Meanwhile, Yui offers to help Mita out with some tasks since the year-end rush has everyone swamped, but she's managing fine herself. Later at home, Masugu asks if Yui is staying over that night, but she says she has a morning meeting and didn't bring extra clothes, teasing that she actually has a life unlike him. As they sit down for a drink, Masugu asks if she's heard anything about the soft cookie contest results yet. Yui says the results should come out soon, but admits she's been overworking herself lately just to stay distracted. When she asks how his studies are going, Masugu replies that the real battle begins after New Year's, but he's ready for it. The next morning at a cafe, Shizuno gifts Sumi a limited edition CD from the band they had talked about before, one she found at her parents' place. Sumi thanks her, and Shizuno shyly mutters that it's funny how similar their tastes are. They both smile, remembering the old TV shows where the songs were featured. Shizuno, catching herself, awkwardly realizes she just said together in her head and quickly excuses herself to stay and work longer at the cafe. She worries if she's being too obvious. After all, he's 8 years younger than her. Later, at work, she catches herself thinking Sumi's smile is pretty cute but forces herself to stop. Shizuno decides to head home early, thinking about the upcoming year-end party and seeing all the couples around her on the street. She wonders how Sumi usually spends Christmas and tells herself that it's best to stay away from getting entangled with coworkers. She even promises herself she'll stop visiting the cafe daily so it won't feel weird between them. Sumi notices that Shizuno hasn't been around the cafe lately and later spots her missing from work events too. When he goes to the accounting department to collect contributions for the year-end party, he wonders where she's been. At the year-end party, Sumi ends up sitting right next to Shizuno, while Masugu notices Yui sitting directly across from him. Yukiko points out that everyone at this table had gone to the baseball game together earlier that year. Masugu reflects that a lot really has changed in just 6 months. When a coworker asks if anyone wants anything else to drink, Shizuno and Sumi both blurt out ginger ale at the same time, but Shizuno changes her mind and orders oolong tea instead. Sumi jokes, asking if she's not feeling like drinking tonight. Meanwhile, Yudu randomly asks a question, catching Masugu and Yui off guard, but it turns out she's just asking about Maria Morizono's social media account. Masugu is surprised to hear it's actually real. Yudu excitedly says Maria's online account is really popular, though Maria quickly denies the rumors about being scouted for TV. As they leave the izakaya, Yudu suggests a karaoke after party and everyone agrees. While Masugu sings his heart out, Sumi nudges Shizuno and asks if she wants to pick a song, but she tells him to go ahead. When a song by Sumi's favorite band comes up, he grabs the mic and starts singing, making Shizuno flustered. She steps out of the room for a breather, scolding herself for overthinking everything. She convinces herself that Sumi probably doesn't think anything about her that way. But then, Sumi chases after her, concerned. He asks if she's feeling okay since she's been acting a little off lately. Shizuno brushes it off, blaming all the year-end parties. Then Sumi, a little nervous, slowly asks if she wants to ditch the after-party and just leave together. Back in the karaoke room, Shizuno quietly sighs in relief, thinking to herself that was a close call. Meanwhile, Yudu and Yukiko excitedly convince Maria Morizono to sing while wearing a school uniform, and Maria happily plays along. While she's singing, Yui nudges Masugu and asks if he wants to sing together, and he smiles and says sure. On Christmas Eve, Masugu muses that for working adults like them, it's just another regular weekday, basically a final push to get things wrapped up before the holidays. Once he finishes his tasks, Shizuno reminds him to take a break, and Maria cheerily tells him there's some cake in the break room. Masugu heads over and finds Yui already there, hard at work. When he asks how she's doing, Yui, still in full work mode, snaps at him not to talk to her. Masugu sulks and jokes that she could have said it a little nicer, but he can tell she's laser focused. He shrugs, turns on the TV, and grabs a slice of cake. Yui then confesses that Christmas usually feels like just another workday for her, but this year feels different. Smiling warmly, she asks Masugu who he thinks she should thank for that. Just as she's about to get back to work, her phone buzzes. It's a message from the section manager congratulating her for winning the spring product competition. Overwhelmed, she and Masugu celebrate the good news before he offers to treat her to a coffee. Elsewhere, Shizuno bumps into Sumi while picking up documents in the archives building and inwardly grumbles about how often this happens. Sumi mentions they haven't seen each other at the cafe lately, and Shizuno explains she's been too swamped lately to go. Sumi says he's been hoping to bump into her again. He wanted to return the CD she gave him. Shizuno nervously says they shouldn't talk too much at work, worrying it might spark weird rumors. But Sumi just shrugs, saying it doesn't bother him. He genuinely enjoys his time at the cafe. And seeing her, too. Blushing, Shizuno reminds herself that he's 8 years younger and her subordinate, but still, she promises to text him next time she visits the cafe. Sumi gives her his contact info, and Shizuno walks away realizing she's totally fallen for him. Meanwhile, Yui, busy serving a customer, jokes to herself that Kirabayashi really is a tough boss. A few days earlier, Yui had decided she wanted to give Masugu a special chocolate gift because they'd both been buried in work. At the same time, Kirabayashi asked if she could help out by working retail at one of their Dar stores during the Valentine's rush. He explained they were short-staffed and it could fuel her ambition a bit. Yui agreed, but only after making him promise to consult with her about her upcoming spring competition entry. On a train ride, Masugu reflects that his bookkeeping exam is coming up soon and Yui's busy prepping for her next proposal, meaning they haven't been able to spend much time together. When he notices his usual cafe is closed, he searches for a new spot and is shocked to spot Shizuno and Sumi chatting at a cafe nearby. Seeing Shizuno's expression, he instinctively feels like he shouldn't interrupt and quickly hides before she notices him. Back at the office, Masugu notices that Shizuno and Sumi seem to be getting along better and debates whether or not he should say something, but decides against it, reminding himself he needs to focus on studying. Even though he tries to concentrate, he can't stop thinking about what he saw. Eventually, Sumi, noticing Masugu struggling, jokes and asks if Shizuno has crazy high standards too. Masugu laughs, saying Shizuno is way more capable than she lets on. Back when he first joined, she scolded him a lot, but thanks to that, he really grew. He adds that she's softened up a lot recently. Sumi smiles and says he didn't know that, then admits he's been talking with Shizuno a lot lately, surprising Masugu. Masugu says Shizuno's actually a great mentor and quietly mentions he spotted them together at the cafe, and that he's never seen Shizuno smile the way she did that day. Hearing this, Sumi blushes, and Masugu wonders if maybe he said too much. While working at the store, Yui sighs to herself, thinking how tough it is balancing her part-time shifts with her project work. Maria Morizono stops by to pick up some sweets and casually mentions that Masugu has been studying hard for his bookkeeping exam. Yui smiles, saying that although they're planning to see each other on Valentine's Day, it's been tough since they barely have time to meet lately. Inwardly, she thinks she's making good progress on her spring product thanks to Kirabayashi's advice, and wonders if she'll be able to grab the chocolate radiant prize. Later that night, Yui collapses onto her bed after a long shift, realizing she and Masugu haven't even texted each other in 2 days. Seeing couples at the store makes her wonder what it'd be like to have a relationship out in the open, not hidden like an office romance. She shakes her head, annoyed at herself for even thinking like that, clearly just because she misses him. Acting on impulse, she calls him just to hear his voice, but gets flustered and quickly hangs up before she embarrasses herself even more. The next day at work, Yukiko asks Yui to run an errand to the accounting department. Hoping to catch a glimpse of Masugu, Yui heads over but realizes they've been missing each other a lot lately. Nervously, she wonders how to face him after her awkward phone call. But when she enters, Masugu coldly asks what she wants. Yui awkwardly accepts the document he hands her, wondering again how things might have been if their relationship wasn't a secret office romance. As Yui gets into the elevator, Masugu steps in behind her. Grabbing her hand, he gently tells her to stop staring and just say whatever's on her mind. Blushing hard, Yui finally admits she missed him so much. Later, in her department, Yui happily sees that her samples for the spring competition have arrived. She passes them out to everyone but realizes she still has to cover a shift at the Dar store too. Yukiko offers to finish up the paperwork for her, and Yui gratefully thanks her. Since it's Valentine's Day, Yui rushes to the store, surprised by the huge crowd. Even Kirabayashi helps out, pitching in without complaint. Seeing couples enjoying chocolate together stings a little, but Yui quickly shakes it off and powers through. Once the rush settles, Kirabayashi thanks Yui for helping and offers her some chocolate as a reward. Yui politely declines, apologizing because she's running late. As she dashes off, she grumbles that she hasn't even fixed her hair or makeup, not ideal for a date. When she finally meets Masugu, Yui apologizes for being late and for not bringing him any chocolate. Masugu just smiles and says it's fine. He even suggests she just give him the samples she made for her project. Surprised, Yui asks if he's really okay with that. He nods, saying he watched her work so hard on them that it feels more meaningful. Overwhelmed, Yui laughs, realizing that dating in secret at work isn't so bad after all. As they walk, Masugu teasingly asks if maybe it's time to go public with their relationship. When Yui freezes, he bursts out laughing, saying he's just joking, no one takes him seriously anyway. Meanwhile, Shizuno sits with her circle of friends, who tease her about the coworker she introduced to her parents. At the office, Shizuno reminds Masugu to hurry home and prep for his big exam, and Maria heads off to attend a sweets fair. Left alone, Shizuno remembers how Sumi had casually asked her if she wanted to go to a concert with him. She gets a message from him saying he's looking forward to it, and tells herself it's just about the concert, nothing more. At home, Masugu packs his materials for the exam, trying to stay calm. But he can't help stressing. He's always struggled with exams and even bombed his job interview. Lying awake, he grumbles that he can't fall asleep at all. Then his phone buzzes with a supportive message from Yui, telling him she believes in him. Masugu smiles and admits to himself he wouldn't have even tried again if it weren't for her. Jokingly, he thinks about how much time and money she's cost him, and still, he doesn't mind. Still wide awake, he calls her and demands that if he passes, she'll have to split the cost of their next hotel stay. Yui, laughing, happily agrees and wishes him the best of luck. The next morning, Masugu takes his seat for his bookkeeping exam while, across town, Shizuno tries on a bunch of dresses, stressing over what to wear. Later, she meets up with Sumi, and as they start walking together, he compliments her, saying her outfit looks amazing. They stash their jackets in the lockers, and Shizuno feels like every little moment today is so precious she could explode from happiness. As the band they came to see starts playing, Shizuno wonders if Sumi only invited her because she's the only one he knows who likes this band, and secretly wishes he had a more special reason. After the concert, as they're walking back, Sumi dodges an oncoming cyclist and casually asks if she'd hang out with him again sometime since he doesn't know many good places around here. Shizuno agrees but suddenly remembers how her previous relationship ended, with a coworker who broke up with her, saying dating within the company was too difficult. Getting flustered, she gently pulls her hand away from Sumi's and says she'll show him around sometime, but quietly decides she can't let this get too serious. Back home, Shizuno sits on her bed, frustrated and confused. She reflects on her past. Her ex, a senior from another department, was 2 years older than her. Having him close gave her strength back then, but one day he abruptly told her they should break up, claiming he couldn't keep up with her ambition and his declining sales numbers crushed his confidence. Later, Shizuno heard office gossip that Nanayama had married someone outside the company. Now, she tells herself it's better to keep things as they are with Sumi, just enjoying their time together without deeper expectations. She quietly hopes she didn't hurt him too much by pulling away. At the cafe, Sumi debates whether to call Shizuno but decides against it. At work, Masugu tells Shizuno that his exam went well. She happily suggests they should celebrate with Maria Morizono later, and he laughs and agrees. That evening, while walking home, Shizuno decides to grab a drink, but to her surprise, she finds Sumi waiting for her outside. They end up heading to an izakaya, and as they sip drinks, Sumi finally tells her what he meant earlier. He likes her. He thought maybe she didn't get it at the concert. Shizuno, flustered, thanks him and says she's honestly touched, but explains that office romances can be rough, especially when you hold certain positions. Nervously, she drinks faster than she should, and Sumi asks if she's okay. Blushing and tipsy, she jokes that he shouldn't make her heart race any more than it already is. Later, Shizuno wakes up confused in a dark room. The lights flick on, it's Sumi's place. He apologizes, explaining she passed out drunk and he didn't know her address, so he brought her home. Shizuno blushes furiously, apologizing over and over. Just then, an older woman walks in with a glass of water, and Shizuno panics even more when Sumi casually introduces her as his mother. Hurriedly, Shizuno apologizes again, but Sumi's mom kindly assures her it's totally fine. As Sumi walks her to the station, he nervously asks if his confession earlier was too much. He admits he did some reflecting while she was asleep. Sumi shyly reveals something she said while sleeping, but reassures her he didn't take advantage of her. Embarrassed but smiling, Shizuno finally confesses that she likes him too and asks if he'd like to officially date. Sumi, grinning from ear to ear, gladly accepts, thinking all his dreams have come true. As they continue walking, Shizuno explains that she's been so cautious because her last office romance ended badly. For now, she suggests they keep their relationship a secret, and Sumi immediately agrees, saying he's just happy she's willing to trust him. Back at work, Sumi hands Shizuno a document and jokes that now he totally understands why people prefer keeping things quiet when they date coworkers. Later that night, they meet up again, and Sumi compliments how cool she looks at work before slipping his hand into hers. Meanwhile, Masugu and Yui celebrate his exam results. He passed. Yui tears up, congratulating him warmly and suggesting they should start booking their in-room for their trip. But when she realizes she accidentally reserved a super luxurious suite costing 100,000 yen, Masugu quickly tells her to cancel it before it's too late. Elsewhere, Masugu grabs drinks with Kiramatsu and Temura. During their conversation, Temura casually drops the bomb that he's getting married next month, shocking them all. They tease him, saying they never thought any of them would settle down, but Temura proudly says he's marrying his high school sweetheart. Everyone raises a glass to celebrate, laughing and cheering for him. Kiramatsu, looking a bit down, jokingly asks if he's going to get stuck paying the bill just because he's the only one without any good news. The others laugh and confirm that, yep, that's exactly how it's going to go. Kiramatsu sighs dramatically but agrees anyway, slumping in defeat as Masugu chuckles and comments that life just keeps moving forward whether you're ready for it or not. At the office, one of the girls casually asks Masugu if he's the guy getting transferred to HR since they heard it's supposed to be a male employee. Seeing his complicated expression, Shizuno checks if something's wrong, but Masugu brushes it off, saying it's not a big deal, though honestly, it's definitely possible. He jokes that maybe it's not the worst thing to be moved, but deep down, he can't help thinking, I just passed my bookkeeping exam. And now they don't need me anymore. Later, Yui catches up with him and tells him not to stress, rumors always start flying like crazy this time of year. Still, she admits it would be sad to see him transferred after how much work he put into getting certified. She explains that according to Sumi, transfers happen pretty fast, you just get a call out of nowhere, and boom, you're moving. At work, Shizuno tells Masugu they need to review task assignments and asks him to email her about it. When Masugu hesitantly asks if this means what he thinks it means, Shizuno nods, saying she still needs to clear it with the higher-ups, but he should start shifting his duties to Maria Morizono bit by bit. Later, Maria almost asks Masugu for help, but he grins at her and declares that she's the future queen of accounting now. He suggests they go grab drinks sometime soon because he'll need to hand over everything he's been doing, and the transition window is super short. That night at home, Masugu admits he still isn't totally on board with this in his heart, but unlike Yui's case where she was scouted, he can't just turn down the transfer unless he has a serious reason. Determined, he decides to make Maria a full troubleshooting guide with links and everything she might need. Meanwhile, Maria confides in Shizuno that Masugu's been acting weird lately, and Shizuno agrees, while Masugu internally promises to leave the accounting department with a perfect track record. Over in the planning department, Mita brags about getting into camping recently and tries convincing everyone to join him sometime. Later, Masugu runs into Yui near the vending machines and gloomily asks what she thinks the vibe is like in the HR department. When Yui teases him for still obsessing over it, he admits that even though he didn't plan on joining accounting at first, he really thought he was doing a good job there. Still, he says he's ready to give it his best no matter where he ends up. Hearing that, Yui smiles and says she loves that about him, and invites him to come camping with everyone. Masugu hesitates, worried someone might find out about them, but Yui shrugs, saying it's fine, they're coming up on their 1-year anniversary anyway. Masugu laughs, saying maybe it's time for them to start moving forward too, just like everything else around them. Later, when the accounting and planning teams arrive at the camping site, Masugu nervously asks if it's really okay they turned his casual family trip into a company gathering. Mita's wife, Ms. Shiori, warmly tells him not to stress about it. After dropping off their luggage at the cottage, everyone heads out to explore. Watching everyone splash around at the river, Shizuno sits quietly, feeling a little awkward because of the age gap. Sumi joins her and suggests they just chill together instead. Meanwhile, Yui helps Ms. Shiori in the kitchen and curiously asks if she and Mita kept their relationship a secret when they were dating at work. Ms. Shiori admits they were terrible at hiding it and just announced they were dating, but smiles and says she's actually keeping a secret from Mita right now too. Yui laughs and offers to help. Masugu pops into the kitchen and learns Ms. Shiori plans to surprise Mita for his birthday since he'll be away next week. The cake's already hidden, they just need a little help decorating. Yui and Masugu get the kids to distract Mita, who starts getting suspicious, but Yudo and Yukiko manage to keep him busy. When they finally surprise Mita with the cake, he lights up and says he's putting a photo of it as his new phone wallpaper. Later that evening, everyone laughs, saying they've never seen Mita look so genuinely happy. Masugu, feeling the moment is right, thinks this could finally be the time to reveal his relationship with Yui. As Yui gives him a little nod, he gathers his courage to speak up, but the conversation takes a sudden turn when someone asks Sumi what he does on his days off. Sumi shyly admits he spends most of his time reading or listening to music, but lately, he's been going out with his girlfriend too. Everyone's shocked to hear Sumi's dating, and he casually reveals that his girlfriend is older, beautiful, and usually picks the places they go. Hearing this, Shizuno grabs Sumi's skewer to shut him up before he accidentally says too much. Sumi chuckles, reassuring her he wasn't planning to name names. Masugu watches the chaos unfold and laughs to himself, thinking that they definitely missed their chance tonight again. The next morning, Masugu wakes up early and decides to take a stroll, but to his surprise, he bumps into Yui outside. She jokes that maybe they both had the same idea, or maybe he was secretly stalking her. As they walk, Yui wonders aloud if campfire magic really loosens people up, since last night felt so lively and fun. Then, she suddenly stops and, smiling brightly, says she wants to finally tell everyone they're dating. Masugu grins and agrees, he's been feeling like it's about time too. Yui suggests they start with Yudu and Yukiko, and plans to invite them out for lunch to break the news. But before they can even get moving, they overhear Shizuno scolding Sumi for being too formal even when they're hanging out together. Noticing them nearby, Yui freezes in shock, but Masugu casually smiles and says, "It's fine, we're dating too." In the end, they end up not telling Yudu and Yukiko after all, and the camp trip wraps up without them making any big announcements. Back at the office, Shizuno informs Masugu that he'll be taking on new responsibilities soon. Surprised, he asks if he's still getting transferred, but Shizuno laughs it off, saying that was just gossip. She explains that the company has high hopes for him now that he passed his level 1 bookkeeping exam. Masugu immediately texts Yui to share the good news that he's not transferring after all, but before she can reply, she gets an unexpected call from HR, asking her to come by the office. There, a man informs her that she's being moved to the public relations department and needs to prepare to hand off her current projects. Feeling a little crushed, Yui returns to her desk and continues working like nothing happened. Later, she texts Masugu about it, and he immediately calls to check on her. He asks if she's okay, knowing how much heart she put into her work at the planning department. Yui admits she was shocked at first, but strangely, a sense of accomplishment washed over her. Masugu laughs, saying she really is incredible. Meanwhile, he had been freaking out over just a transfer rumor. Yui teases him about going out for drinks with Maria Morizono, but he chuckles and says they just grabbed ramen instead. At the office, Yui finishes wrapping up her tasks and finds an email from Kirabayashi, encouraging her and saying the PR department would be a great place for her to grow. Later, Yukiko and Yudu invite her out for dinner. As they're eating, Yui finally breaks the news about her transfer. They nod knowingly, saying they had a feeling since she had been meeting with the section manager a lot lately. They cheer her on, saying PR is a big deal, basically a promotion, but Yudu jokes that it still makes her want to cry a little. Yukiko scolds her and tells Yui to lean on them whenever she needs support. Feeling emotional, Yui tearfully agrees. Then, with a deep breath, she admits there's one more thing she's never had the guts to say. She and Masugu have been dating. Yudu reacts in pure shock, while Yukiko just smirks and says she already knew, pretending to be surprised for effect. Yukiko recalls how they used to seem suspiciously close sometimes, making Yui blush hard. Laughing it off, Yui says she wants to hear about their love lives too, but they just mutter that they'll share if they ever have one worth telling. Later that night, after attending Tamura's wedding, Masugu and Yui walk home together. Masugu chuckles, saying he didn't expect Tamura to start crying on stage like that. Yui, smiling softly, says this moment reminds her of when they used to walk home together back in the day, and cheerfully murmurs that they really went through a lot before finally ending up together. In a flashback after the company party, Yui kept up her usual grumpy act toward Masugu at work, but little by little, she also started opening up to him. One day, she shyly thanked him for his feedback on her last project, and Masugu blushed, thinking to himself that she was 100 times cuter when she was texting nicely like that. She casually asked if he wanted to visit a dessert cafe with her on his next day off, and he eagerly agreed, but was left even more confused about where he stood with her. While riding the elevator together, Masugu nervously complimented her hair and was about to blurt out his feelings when a group of coworkers suddenly squeezed in, killing the moment. Later that day, as they hung out, Masugu noticed Yui had actually styled her hair exactly the way he liked it. Seeing that tiny gesture made him feel like, maybe, he could move forward if he just had a little more proof she felt the same. He teased her that she should be taking notes because these were important life lessons, and he carried her box for her, making Yui happily admit she was glad she came along. At one point, an employee asked if they'd pose for a photo with the store's promotional stand, saying they might win a limited edition suite. Embarrassed but smiling, they posed together, awkwardly standing a little too close. Later, as rain poured down, Masugu offered to let Yui crash at his place since it wasn't far from where they were. At home, he nervously wondered why he'd even invited her in the first place. When Yui stepped out of the shower, he instinctively moved toward her, but quickly pulled himself together, remembering they were still coworkers. Instead, he awkwardly told her to dry her hair properly. At another work party, someone asked Tamura how things were with his girlfriend, while another coworker loudly declared that dating someone from work sounded like a nightmare. Masugu, hearing all this, groaned internally like he needed another reminder when he was already spiraling over these exact fears. Later that night, he heard someone mention that Yui was about to walk home drunk and alone. Panicking, Masugu rushed out to find her. When he caught up, he scolded her for being reckless. Yui coldly told him not to follow her, but Masugu, heart racing, blurted out that she didn't have the wrong idea because he liked her. Turning around, Yui's face turned bright red, and Masugu admitted he'd been too scared to make a move before because he didn't want to lose her smile. To his surprise, Yui quietly confessed that she liked him too, but admitted she was terrified that things would get awkward between them at work or that whatever they had might not last. Masugu nodded, saying he understood, but even so, he didn't want to stay as coworkers, pretending nothing was there. He suggested the obvious, they could just date in secret. Yui smiled and agreed immediately, wondering why neither of them thought of that sooner. In the present day, as they walk together, Yui laughs and says she's genuinely excited for everything coming next with him. Masugu grins and says he feels the same. Later in the elevator, Masugu casually asks if she's starting at her new department today. Yui nods, saying she's stepping into a brand new chapter. Masugu flashes her a proud smile, telling her to crush it in the PR department. As he steps off the elevator, both of them secretly think to themselves, I've still got a crush on my work. That's it for today's video guys, watch the following and I will see you in the next one.